Breaking news, the Senate has formally passed the bill to release the Epstein files, sending it to the president's desk. President Trump has said he will sign it, but he's also had the power to release the files all along. Now some are questioning whether he will actually sign the bill and whether the Justice Department will try to withhold some of the files or redact content from them. White House correspondent Karen Travers and ABC's Jay O'Brien are here for more on that. Jay, House Speaker Mike Johnson said he was deeply disappointed the Senate approved this bill without making any changes. And he says he and President Trump both have concerns. Is he laying the groundwork for a veto here?
He seems to be, Diane, and the Speaker had made no secret yesterday of the fact that he believes there are deep flaws with this legislation. He said that over and over again yesterday, despite the fact that he voted for it and every other member of Republican leadership voted for it and every other member of the House Republican Conference, except for one, voted for it yesterday as well. All of that to say, Johnson made it clear yesterday that he wanted the Senate to rewrite this, and that's incredibly rare. Usually the House sends legislation over to the Senate and they cross their fingers and pray that the Senate doesn't make any substantive changes. What Johnson said yesterday when the House was passing this legislation, or poised to pass it, is that he wanted the Senate to make significant changes. He said he believes that the bill doesn't do enough to protect the identities of victims or confidential informants that participated in investigations into Jeffrey Epstein, and the list goes on and on and on. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune, even before this legislation officially passed the Senate, made it clear that he wasn't really in the mood for any changes. He said that when the House passes something with that broad of a bipartisan margin and the president signals that he would sign it, that there really isn't any room for changes to the legislation. So it sails through the Senate yesterday. It formally passes today when it was transmitted over from the House to the Senate. And now it heads to the president's desk, where it's really up to the president on to whether he's going to make good on his promise to sign this, or if he's going to veto it, or if he's going to try to sit on this legislation.
Karen, President Trump fought against this effort for a long time before he then reversed course when it was apparent that the bill would pass anyway. So what happens if he does follow through and sign this bill?
So, and that's the if right now that we're waiting for. The White House has said that the president is preparing to sign the legislation. Earlier this week, when he was asked about this before they had moved to the vote, the president said, sure, I would. But as Jay noted there, he could sit on it for a little bit. There's no indication that this is going to happen imminently, but perhaps it could. The White House hasn't indicated a timeline. If he does sign the legislation, making good on what he said earlier this week to reporters, then there's a 30-day countdown for when the Justice Department would be compelled to release unclassified information. And that includes documents, communications, other investigative materials included in the Epstein files. But they could also redact some of the information there, things related to victims' identity or other high-profile people. And that's something that we, of course, will be looking for. There's the other big unknown with all of this, Diane, is that the president last week called for the investigation of high-profile Democrats that he says have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The attorney general moved forward on that. And because of that, because it's written into the legislation, they can always say, because of an ongoing investigation, we are not going to release any or all of these files.
Jay, Epstein survivors celebrated when the bill passed the House. What are they saying now?
Yeah, and there was also this striking moment, Diane, too, where they were holding this vigil for Epstein survivors who were there at the Capitol, others who were not, and then some who have passed away. And as they're holding this vigil with Democratic lawmakers yesterday, after the legislation had passed the House, they got news that it had passed by unanimous consent in the Senate, and there was this cheer that erupted. They have fought for years here, Diane, to pass some kind of legislation to this effect, and then more broadly, just for more transparency into this Epstein case writ large. They have said today that they hope the president signs this, that he makes good on his promise to sign this. And they also had some choice words for President Trump yesterday, where they had that emotional press conference on Capitol Hill. And by my count, there were at least 2 Epstein survivors who have said in the past that they voted for President Trump, but they don't like the way that he's been handling this situation. One Epstein survivor just yesterday called the president's handling of this matter, and she said she voted for the president, a quote-unquote disgrace. And so we've heard today that they're watching the president's actions very closely here, but also they're keenly aware that there was a long arc to the release of these files, because as Karen notes, even if the president puts pen to paper today and signs this bill into law, it doesn't guarantee that all of these files will be released unredacted or that some wouldn't be held back because of investigations. And really the ball here, in a way that it has not been up to this point, is squarely in the administration's court. Previously, the administration has been looking at releasing files and been promising transparency, in the words of some Epstein survivors, falling short. But there's also been this dual congressional action, this legislation that they've been trying to force to a vote. Now Congress has voted this legislation fully out of the Congress, and it is entirely on the administration on how to proceed here.
Karen, meanwhile, President Trump is set to give remarks at a Saudi investment forum within the hour. What can we expect there after his big meeting with the Crown Prince yesterday?
Diane, he's going to be focusing on Saudi investment here in the United States. This is actually the second Saudi business forum he has done just this month. He traveled to Miami for one a couple weeks ago. But yesterday, the president was touting the $600 billion that the Saudi Crown Prince says he will invest in the United States. The president pushing him to get that number to $1 trillion. That's something that they had first talked about when the president traveled to Riyadh in May. But of course, looming large over all of this is the president's family business and their own ties to Saudi Arabia. Yesterday, our colleague Mary Bruce asked the president about this, whether there were conflicts of interest for his family to do business there while he's in office. He brushed that off, says he has nothing to do with the family business, and the family is doing very little business in Saudi Arabia. Diane, there are 3 development projects that the Trump organization has in the works right now in that country.
Karen Travers, Jay O'Brien, thank you both.